I remember the name. Jas Takhar, best in the game. Mamba mentality in his own lane. So better pay attention to what he be saying. Get the message, ain't no question. Giving advice for any investment. Welcome to the broadcast, the Jas Takhar Podcast.
Well, the team has told us that we're live.
We're live.
We're ready to go. But the good thing with you is that you don't need a lot of rehearsing, because we were talking off air, like on text for a couple of minutes, and you were just like, Jas, are we going to do what we do, kind of, right? Like just go off. And I was like, yeah, Marky, like that's the only way I could do it. I want to welcome you, Mr. Mark Arnstein, to the Jas Takhar Podcast. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
You and I have done some things together in terms of you starting your content through a podcast like / show. You have the Mark Arnstein show. You kind of had with the company that I had, which was the media arm / department of From the Ground Up, which now I've done a complete rebrand, relaunch with my business partner Laura, where we've turned that into an academy. But you were already doing content as well. You're a very, very, very high producing agent, and the reason I emphasize that, brother, is because not only are you a high producing agent, because there's other high producing agents as well, right? In all fairness, it's your consistency at staying at the top. And so I really want to dive into that.
Sure.
I'm going to say about 50% of my viewers and listeners, brothers, are real estate agents / entrepreneurs, which we are, and / business people. I just think most real estate agents don't see themselves as business people. We'll get into that. And then the other
That's
50,
one of the biggest mistakes most agents make, actually.
100%. Let's dive into that conversation, because I really want to get your thoughts about that, as well as then I have the other 50% that are people who want to create wealth, right? And obviously, I probably speak more about the vehicle being real estate, because that's the business I'm in, but you know the market at large very well. So maybe we'll touch on that. Actually, let's get started there, right? Why don't we talk about what are you seeing right now at the time of this recording? We're July 2023.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the business for
Too long.
Can't tell by the way you look, but how long have you been?
27 years.
Holy shit.
I
thought it was...
No,
so I'm 19 years in the business.
No, I came from Vancouver, right? So
right.
I was an agent in Vancouver for 9 years, or just over 9 years. Then I moved here. It'll be 19 years actually next month. So
same.
It's like,
in the GTA, you and I are the same.
Yeah, so it's coming actually up on 28 years total in the business, but 19 years in the GTA.
Okay, so before we speak about the market, let's talk about that transition. 9 years in Vancouver.
Correct.
Why the move to Toronto?
Simple. Happy wife is a happy life. So my wife...
She born there?
Yeah. No, she's from here.
Okay.
So she, we had one of those relationships where it was like long distance. We were dating. She was in New York doing her master's degree at NYU. I was in Vancouver. We met through a friend of mine who's now actually married to her sister. So we're now brother-in-laws, which is kind of funny. Anyways, when she graduated, I said, like, look, you got to move to Vancouver. I'm not moving to Toronto. Like, we're not engaged. Like, I'm not starting my career all over again from scratch. Haha. You got to come here. So she agreed, moved to Vancouver, eventually got engaged, got married. And after about 3 years, she was just like, I can't do it anymore. I got to be back in Toronto. It's too hard. And flying 5 hours with a crying wife is not my idea of a good time. Yeah. So I agreed to move to Toronto 19 years ago and start everything all over again from scratch.
Wow, man, that's crazy. So you come here 19 years ago in the business, which is awesome, because I want to take you back there, because there's a lot of people who maybe are coming from a different country even and starting in this business, and they say, okay, I don't have anybody.
Right.
So take us back now. What did you do? Like, what was the first thing you do? You knew real estate. You knew how to put deals together, obviously. Right?
Yeah.
Were you full-time in Vancouver, by the way? Okay, so you know how to do that. You're obviously very charismatic, and, people are going to know where to follow you on Instagram and stuff. You got to follow this guy on all his socials.
Whoa, hold on. But don't forget, like, back then, there was no socials.
No, I know. Exactly. I'm saying now, right? They'll see how charismatic you are. So I know you got that it factor. But at the end of the day, you still don't know anybody when you kind of come here, right?
No.
So what did you do at the start to start getting business?
So it was interesting. Actually, my business in Vancouver, so just to back it up a little bit, was basically a repeat and referral business, right? So I was like a small fish in a big pond. I knew a ton of people. So word got out, like, hey, here's Mark, this young go-getter agent. knows his stuff inside and out, takes good care of his clients. I built a great practice from that. So before moving here, I sat down with a good friend of mine in my office who was a massive farmer in Vancouver, worked a prime area of Vancouver called Kitsilano. And I said, Dave, tell me exactly how you've been doing this because I need to duplicate it in Toronto. Because my idea was not knowing anybody, what are my options, right? So I went for farming because I figured I got money in my pocket. I'm going to invest into growing the farm and I'm going to go that route rather than try and build a repeat referral business because I don't have any people
to repeat and
refer. Exactly.
Yet.
So started with doing that. And in the meantime, to start getting some business generating, I was just grabbing every single open house I could possibly get my hands on. So I was doing, at that point, we didn't have any kids yet. So it was easy. So I was doing 2 a day. I was doing 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sundays, right? So one was from 1 to 3 and the other one was from 3:30 to 5. And hopefully I got out in time to get to the next one, get the signs put back out again, and off you go.
I love the grind.
And that's how I built it. And it was interesting too because, coming from Vancouver, because we didn't really ever use lockboxes back then. Everything was shown from agent to agent. So if you called me and said, Mark, I want to show one of your listings, I was there for the showing. So there was no lockbox. It was like direct access. And so you had these amazing relationships with all the agents. So when it came time to doing deals, it was actually really easy. It was great. So coming here, when I started doing open houses, and people would walk in, they're like, look at me kind of funny. I'm like, is everything okay? And they're like, no, you're nice. I was like, oh, I'm like, okay, this is a good thing. Like that's actually, I'm like, all right, this is great. So
something in my teeth.
Yeah. So it was, and it just kind of grew from there. I mean, the hardest part was really just getting to know the nuances within the market because of knowing a very detailed market in Vancouver, and the language was a little bit different out west compared to what it is out east.
For example?
We don't have mutual drives in Vancouver, right? Like broadloom. No one just talks about carpet as broadloom. I was like, what the heck is broadloom? I
didn't understand that 19 years ago.
What are elves?
Why can't you call it carpet?
Yeah, that's a carpet, right?
Elves.
Elves. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I mean, what that? Why are there elves running through the houses? I don't understand what's going on here.
Why is that a good thing? Everyone's acting like they want to add it in the extras, right?
Yeah.
Electric light fixtures for everybody who's wondering all the jargon. Sorry, go.
Yeah. So it took me a little, and then just just a little bit of the understanding the market, and getting, dialed into looking at a house and going, yeah, I know that house is worth X amount of dollars, which, I mean, again, if you're good at what you do and you have a knack for it, you're going to figure it out pretty quickly.
Did you find, especially back then, there was a difference in terms of the people by any means, or is it, I'm from the adage that people are just kind of people, right?
Yeah, I don't think...
No, right? Coming from Vancouver and then clients here.
No, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to say this politically correct.
Yeah, I know. I know that's what you did.
Yeah. Generally, I find because the commission structure here is higher, so typically, if, on a $500,000 sale here, commission is
call it
20
on the 5%.
Yeah, is that $25,000?
Yeah.
Where in Vancouver it would be $12,000
because they work in tiers, right?
Yeah. So the first chunk of the commission's on the first 100,000,
yeah.
and then it's and then the rest of it's on the balance. But then it gets divided between a higher ratio goes to the listing agent and a lower ratio goes to the selling agent. So, because the idea is that the listing agent has more expenses for taking on the listing.
I can understand that. Yeah.
So yeah. So when I first it seemed like the attitude of most of the agents, and especially in Central Toronto, was a little bit like, "My shit don't stink." Sorry, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, for sure. The only words we don't use are like "fuck" and those kind of. It's open. So say what you want to say.
I remember when we got a dog when we first moved here, and that was my saving grace. And anyways, we're out for a walk, and I saw an open house sign. Literally, we'd been in the neighborhood for a week and a half, right? And I said to my wife, let's walk in and go see what's going on. Because I just want to see, I hadn't started working yet, right?
You didn't even get licensed here yet?
No, because I had to do a challenge exam to get my license for Ontario.
Oh, so it's not, you didn't have to go through what I did to get licensed?
No,
okay.
Yeah. So, and again, they don't get, typical time, they don't give you any guidance as to what's actually on the exam. So I was trying to figure out all the things that were different as opposed to what actually was the same.
Right.
And the stuff that was different wasn't on the exam. It was like all the same. And, again, they didn't tell you at the time it was open book. And like, it was like, I'm like, okay, God, if I'd known this, I could have written it like months earlier. Anyways.
You were like actually studying
yeah,
it.
Exactly.
Me too, man. Me too. Yeah.
So anyways, it's like going to this open house, not even paying attention what time it is. And I walk in, the guy's standing there wearing sunglasses and like jacket on, arms folded. And he's like, wow, you're like really prompt. I'm like, whoa. Really? That's what you said to me as someone walking into an open house? And I looked to my wife, I'm like, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the bar is set low?
Yeah, exactly. Because the bar is set, like, that's my competition. Wow. And, and the thing is, like, I was able to take advantage of doing those opens. And that's how I was really actually able to, grow the business and get off to the races and get it up and running. And then I was able to then take more of that money that I was making from doing the open houses and the deals I was making there, and then put it back into growing into the farm area to grow that part of the business as well.
And then, so the farm area, what did you choose? And is it like where you're at right now? So tell my guys.
Yeah. So basically, Lawrence Park North. So going from Avenue Road East over to the other side of Yonge Street towards Wanless Park, and staying like between basically Wilson down to Lawrence. Now it has expanded over time because, like, obviously I started off as about, I think, 5,000 homes. No, sorry, 2,500. Then it grew to 5, and then now it's at 10.
Now, the reason I was like really excited, other than just seeing you, and I knew the energy. Yeah, right. We got that chemistry, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Is because your business is somewhat run differently than mine, and I think that's great for the viewers and listeners.
Sure.
Because I'm very, very adamant in people understanding that, look, this has worked well for me, the way that I run it and the way that I do it. God knows how many mistakes I've made. Way more than successes that I've had.
But we all make mistakes. That's part of business.
And 100%. But I think a lot of people are just scared to make those mistakes because they think about the one person or the 15 people maybe in their lives of what their opinion's gonna be on that mistake or that failure, right? Where I think guys like you and I understand that, like, failing is part of the process. Fail forward. You can figure out what went wrong, because now in the future when you start something, you have a new starting point.
Right.
It's not where you started a year ago or 6 months ago. It becomes your new starting point. But what I was really trying to get to is that the fact that we run our businesses differently, and one blaring difference in our businesses is that you farm.
Yes.
Right? Like in the typical way of farming, like geographical farm, something even if I said I dipped my toe in it, I would be lying, right? Again, that doesn't make Mark right, or doesn't make Mark wrong. It doesn't make me right or make
no, it
me
makes
wrong.
me right.
Right, exactly. And you have done it very well. But man, and this is where I really want you to talk about the actual farming and what it takes and the patience you need, right? Because I know a lot of people are like, I'm going to do farming, and then they fucking do it for 2 weeks or whatever, 3 months, call it. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, right?
Yeah. Before we started the podcast, you actually said one of the key words. That's what it's all about. And it doesn't matter whether it's farming or anything you're going to do. It's the consistency, right? It's the consistency at which you're going to attack that task that you're going to do. So whether it's working out and staying in shape, whether it's your relationships, whether, work relationships, personal relationships, it's your business, it all comes down to the consistency at which you're going to approach it. And if you're not consistent in doing it, you're not going to have success at doing it.
So why have you been able to be consistent?
Because of the mindset. It's up here, right? It's like, if my goal, back up probably, my family gave me a really hard time when I moved, right? Because they were like, obviously they were sad to see me go. I hope that's what the case was. But, at the same token, it was like, real estate's all about who you know, not what you know. And, you're going to a big city, you're going to get chewed up, it's going to spit you out, you're going to fail, you're never going to succeed, you're leaving all this behind, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, screw you. I am proving you guys wrong. And I have gone above and beyond proving them all wrong. So, which has been very rewarding, but
I know it was coming from a good place too,
yeah.
Right? Like, is mom and dad speaking?
Just mom.
Okay, got it.
Mom and my siblings. My dad passed away a long time ago. So,
okay.
But, and it was a driver, right? And but again, I'm competitive. And that's also a driver, right? So that's what pushes you. And knowing, again, having that talk with the agent, friend of mine from my old office, Dave Richardson, if you happen to be listening, which I probably are not, but if you are, thank
We're
you
going to
very
get it
much.
to him.
We'll
Shout out, Dave.
Remax Select.
There you go.
In Vancouver. But like, just look, knowing that this is what I have to do, this is how I'm going to attack it, this is how to go at it and make it successful. Because the problem with farming is, like, or like anything, it's like everyone wants to try the new shiny object and no one wants to give it time to grow. And it's like, I've done many talks with this before, and when I've been like over in Europe talking at the Remax International Convention, or other talks I've done for Richard Robbins and those guys, it takes time, right? It's called farming for a reason. So like, if I was to start a new farm, like a actual vegetable farm, right? The first year of growing crops is probably going to be pretty bad, right? Because I don't really know totally everything that I'm doing, what's working, what's not working, right? The next year is going to be a little bit better. The third year, it's going to be even better. And then it's going to grow and build from each year after that. The problem is, if you don't get instantaneous results, everyone's like, stop, this doesn't work, I'm going on to the next thing. It's also expensive. That's the other part of it, that people have to be prepared. In order to be successful on a farm, you got to put money out there, because you have to be, again, consistent in what you're doing with it and making sure that you're mailing on it on a regular basis.
Now, so how many homes are you farming right now currently in 2023?
10,000.
10,000?
Yeah.
And you said it started at 5, right?
2,500.
I apologize, 2,500. Okay. So let's talk about now. And then for the people who are thinking about doing this, you also maybe mention to them, like, did you feel that the 2,500 was a good place? Like, if you were to do it all again, right? Like, that was easy for you, or you were like, shit, maybe I should have started at 500, or maybe I should have just done 10,000 from the start?
No, it's a loaded question. And the reason why I say that is because it really depends on the area in which you're going to be farming in.
Okay. Why does that matter?
Because it matters, like, again, so I just happened to pick probably one of the most competitive markets in all of probably Canada.
And that was because you were living there?
Because I was living there, not knowing that in advance.
Okay.
Right? So I just, when we decided to buy our house there, I was like, this kind of feels a bit more like home. I like the mix of style of houses. It kind of feels good, feels right.
Beautiful
Away we go, right? Not knowing that when I first started, there were probably 10 to 12 agents that were way ahead of me. So when you're picking a farm area, you got to look at a couple things. Is one, what's the turnover rate of homes? Like, how often are homes selling on a regular basis? Two, how many agents are getting the majority of the listings? Because those are going to be your competition you're going to have to try and knock off, right? And then three, how regularly is everyone else sending? Because you're going to have to do above and beyond what everybody else is doing in the get-go to get your foot in the door and get your presence be felt.
Okay, now I really want to dive into this for a second, because turnover ratio.
Yeah.
Okay. You've obviously probably seen it go lower now, right? Like, from what it was in that area, maybe 10 years ago, even people are staying in their homes longer. I feel, but maybe I'm wrong in that specific market.
Yeah, no, because there's diverse type of property in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So you have, like, from everything from your little wartime bungalows,
Yep,
to which are now becoming far and few between because they've all been mostly knocked down, to like your typical North Toronto square plan that hasn't been renovated, to the ones that have been fully renovated, to the semis, to the new infills. So there's actually quite a wide variety of product in the area. And typically in that neighborhood, what happens is once most people get into the neighborhood, they don't want to leave. So they want to just do the upgrade. So they go from, like, the semi to the detached, to the renovated detached, to the newer detached, and they kind of upgrade.
So what's that number? Is it 5%? Like, what are we looking for in terms of turnover?
You want to see, again, it depends on the size of the farm, right? So there should be enough that that the number makes sense. That if you have like 20 houses turn over in a year, that's probably an area I'm not going to want to farm.
Right.
Like, there's just not enough business happening.
Right.
But if you have, like, on average, 300-400 houses turn over a year,
right,
there's enough business there to go around.
Okay. And then you're looking at, okay, hopefully call it 300 just for argument's sake, right? There's 300 homes in this district, in this location of the 10,000 homes that are going to be farming, for example. How many agents would be too much that are farming that area, for example?
Well, I mean, right now there still is too many agents that are farming there, but the difference is that there's only very few that do it consistently.
Got it.
Right? So what happens is most agents will, they'll get a listing, say, in the neighborhood, because they just by fluke got a listing in that neighborhood. Oh, I'm gonna send a postcard and I'm gonna send a mailer out. And they send the mailer out which is great. But then they go, oh man, I didn't get any phone calls.
Done.
I'm on to the next thing.
Got it.
I'm not doing it again, right? So because like I live in the farm, the guys on the team live in the farm. So we collect all the mailers that come in and you see, right? And there's very few that are doing it on a consistent, regular basis.
So how often are you sending something out?
Once every 2 weeks.
Holy shit. Okay, so once every 2 weeks, people get some type. And what is it? Just like
It's
a
either
postcard?
either just listed, just sold, or a newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that is.
Or an event. It could also be an event if we're doing
That's where I was going. It's funny, like you kind of had my notes.
Yeah.
Which
because we're mind readers. We're simpatico.
This is what I was talking about, the chemistry, which is the fact that a lot of people would do what you said, which is just, they got a listing, they send out their just listed or just sold, and then they don't send anything. Then you have the next kind of level. There's levels to this game, right? And so the next level is sending something out twice a month. Great. That's actually better than the first kind of rung, right, on this ladder.
Right.
Then you have somebody what you do, and I've known of you doing this for a very long time, is that you're not just sending stuff out once every 2 weeks. You're putting on these strategic events in the area with the local shop owners, bringing your clientels. I think the biggest one that you told me about, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like the pumpkin giveaway stuff, right? So. How long have you been doing that event, and where did that idea come from, and then how do you actually execute it?
Okay, so the idea came from an agent in Vancouver.
Our boy Dave?
No, different.
Okay.
No. Dave, he never really did events. He did Christmas time. He would give every house he had in the farm a poinsettia.
Wow.
Yeah, which I
That's
was like,
pretty crazy.
that's pretty crazy. He had
And was he flirting around like 3,000-4,000 homes as well? Kind of thing?
Yeah. Like
Okay.
I'm like,
But I love that.
yeah.
He obviously understood this patient game with it. Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
There was another guy who worked in another area in Vancouver. Like Dave's area was an area called Kitsilano, and then there's another agent, a friend of mine from also a Remax agent there, that worked in the Dunbar area, which is where I lived as well. And he would do the pumpkin giveaway. And I was like, that's a really good idea.
Do you have kids at this time, by the way?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't do, like when you have the kids, you're like, let me do the pumpkin stuff with them. And then
Yeah.
you're like, other kids. But that's actually really thinking forward,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So, so basically, as I was like trying to figure out ways to kind of like get going with the farm, trying to grow it, I was like, we got to start doing some events. And so this year will be in October 21st, 2023. It will be our 10th annual free pumpkin giveaway.
That's so
and
cool.
this year we were going big.
Yeah.
We're blocking off part of the street because
Holy shit.
Yeah, because we've had too many accidents. Because it gets so busy.
You sent me a video or a picture, I can't remember, from the last one in 2022.
Yeah.
It was berserk.
Yeah. So this last fall we did 650 pumpkins, and they were gone. The event runs from 9 to 11, and we were wiped out by 10:30.
And see, for the people that are listening who are thinking about doing like farming, you need to understand, and Mark touched on it, which is you need to understand that most people, if not everyone, can actually make up a plan. You can make a plan to do a farm. You can make a plan to eat better. You can make a plan to do more business. But then you have probably 50% of people that actually execute it.
That's the key part, is execution.
Right? But then I actually think the next level after that, Mark, is the fact that maybe only 1%, you're one of them, who actually stick with the plan.
Well, and see, it's funny that you say that, because other agents who worked in the neighborhood who like have tried to duplicate the pumpkin giveaway, and they've all stopped it. None of them have they've all given up on it. Like it's like,
yeah, and when you get the stuff in the mail, you and the team, I don't know, you remind me of a restaurant or like a new club that, not that I ever was in any of those businesses, but I've always wondered as well, right? Like this new restaurant or this new club. Sorry, not the new one. Like there's maybe one that's been in an area for 10 years and it's always kind of consistently busy. And then you get this new restaurant or club come into the area and everyone's like, oh my God, like you're going to lose all this business. And you got to see the lineups that are at these restaurants. The food is awesome. But the smart restaurant owner / club owner would say, let's see if they're here in a year.
Yeah.
Let's just see, right? Like you might see that. Like you have all these people that come in and start shit, and you're like, let me see if this guy's still sending shit in 6 months.
Yeah,
or this girl.
Well, and there's a couple of that, I've tried to duplicate some of the stuff that I'm doing in different ways and copy some of my marketing, and colors, like. Knock yourself out. It's just it doesn't help you. It actually hurts you because everyone just thinks you're me anyways.
Right.
So like it's actually does a reverse effect as opposed to a positive. But the thing is, like, back to what you're saying is so like it started 10 years ago. We lost a couple years because of COVID, unfortunately. Otherwise, we probably would be in this would be our 12th actual one this year, as opposed to number 10. But
during COVID, were you still sending people stuff though?
So what we did was we did a big massive donation to North York Harvest Food Bank.
Well, no, I'm talking about like even your flyers.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
That's just been on autopilot for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but we had to stop doing the events, right?
Makes sense.
Because you couldn't do the event.
Yep.
So so the 2 years we missed in COVID, we took advantage of and took the money that we would have used for the event instead, and then we did donation to the North York Harvest Food Bank instead.
Well, congratulations
to
sticking to it. And again, for everybody who's watching and listening, you could have easily just said, 2 years of, okay, I can't do this event, but let me still give back, right? And we all know that giving will always start the process of receiving.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
our good mutual friend Richard Robbins says that all the time.
And
right?
I think it's absolutely words to live by. Like,
right?
It's like, for sure, because when you give, you receive. When you put good things out there, good vibes, good energy, good all that good stuff, it comes back to you, right?
Right.
And like last year, I had a couple people ask me if I would run for city council. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, no.
Any politics in your future?
No. You
just don't like. What is it that you don't like about it? Just curious.
We're getting off topic here.
No, it's all good.
It's not. My wife would kill me. But it's no. I mean, there's a lot of things that are wrong, and I think I'm very concerned about who's in the mayor right now for Toronto and where that's going to go because I was doing numbers the other day and I was playing around with stuff because you're talking about up in the city of Toronto land transfer tax for homes over $3 million. I'm like, okay, that's wrong. Number one. Number two is you guys have generated probably close to $14 billion since that tax.
I think the stat came out. It's very close to that.
Yeah. Since that tax came into play. What in the world have you done with all that money? Think about that. $14 billion.
What is it, about a decade now that's been around?
No, it's I think it came out in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, so longer.
Yeah,
so,
even longer. Okay.
So, and I've just said so one, I like to know what's happened with that. Number two, you guys want to generate more money? There's two things you need to do. Get in cahoots with the province, right? Change the way condominiums are done. Get them all registered before they start construction. So when they're finished and you can get people moving in, there's no interim occupancy permit. You just get people moving in right away. And guess what? Now you're collecting property tax.
Right away,
as opposed to waiting for the building to fully register, which is, shocker, they do that in BC.
Yeah.
Right? So that's number one. Number two is you can raise the property tax rate, I think, which is fine. Because Toronto actually has the lowest mill rate anywhere in the province.
Yep.
But what you do instead is you give a break to anyone who's a widower or a pensioner so that way they're not going to get hit with the increase in the property tax again, which is also what they do in Vancouver. So
I can see why people are saying maybe you should run.
Funny, man. Don't go there. Don't go.
I mean, for me, it always comes back. Like I wouldn't want to run for a councillor or a mayor.
Yeah.
And no offense to any of them.
Like,
I mean,
all the power
to you to do it, especially for what you get paid for. Like, I don't even know their salaries, but I kind of heard.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like if I'm not going to go for the big one, like the prime minister, and I don't speak French fluently,
either do I.
So I don't. Right. So I don't have the time either to learn French. I'm not thinking about becoming, like just a mayor.
But I'm saying you want to do all these things, but why don't you why don't you talk to the people who are in the biz and find out what is actually really going on so that you can make the adjustments. And I know we're getting completely off topic here, but it goes back to the same thing with which builders and construction and HST, right? Like basically the government Canada is basically in Ontario has killed the small independent contractor renovator because they cannot make any money right now at doing massive renovations or infill homes when the demand is through the roof for this stuff, because most people don't want to go through the hassles of doing all the work themselves. They'd rather pay the premium to have someone do it for them, and they can just move right in, because the process takes way too long.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the process. In Toronto, it takes close to 10 years.
For a condo,
For a condo.
Yeah.
Like from application for it to be built. I mean, Manhattan, they do that in 2.5, 3 years. And it's even like tougher to get around and actually do the construction in a place like Manhattan. But we have so much red tape here.
It's ridiculous.
Where if you wanted to actually see values come down and make it more affordable, it's quite simple. You just need to flood the city with more housing supply, get more supply out there, get it out there quicker. But I have a funny feeling, and not that I know, and I'm really being honest, but I have a funny feeling someone's pockets don't get lined fat enough if they speed up that process.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
For sure,
That's why I think we're seeing this massive, massive issue with supply and demand.
Yeah.
You could just build these things quicker.
Yeah.
Just build them quicker, open up some of the air rights as well, change up the zoning a little bit, and increase the density, because we've seen it work very well in other cities around the world.
Well, but like look at the subway system. Like I mean the crosstown line. I mean, right? If that was anywhere else than Toronto, that would have been built and finished already 5 years ago.
What about the Eglinton LRT?
Yeah, that's
cross. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I reference it as I can't. What the hell's going on?
But back to I was saying about construction, but the infill work. But like I'm talking about just the one-offs, right?
Yes.
Like, so as a builder, I'm 20% in the hole before I even put a shovel in the ground. There's not 20% profit in doing the project. So there's zero motivation for these guys to go ahead and do this work, and you're wiping all these guys out. And like, it's simple. The government double dips with the HST, right? Because when you buy the property, you're not paying any HST on it. But when you go to sell it, you're paying HST on the full freight. So all I'm saying is take the initial purchase price. Don't even worry about the increase in value or whatever the change is. So if I buy a lot for $1 million and I sell it for 2.5, right? Take the $1 million back out of the equation, tax me on the 1.5, which is what you should be taxing me on anyways.
On the increase.
On the increase, right? Not the full amount. And not only that, what happens now is I'm going to do everything legitimately. So now I'm going to make sure all my trades are working properly, which now means they're filing proper tax returns, because they're not getting cash on the table anymore like they used to. And now you're paying 13% on 1.5 versus 2.5. That's a big differential.
Right.
Right now, it starts to make it a little bit more palatable and possible doing this work. And, you know, and you're talking about that creates more housing too, because now you're going to get the couple that, you know, has that opportunity to sell their current home, buy the finished product. So now you've created more housing and more supply, because more people are going to be able to go ahead and do this work. And then it's going to just create more housing for everybody.
Now, what are you actually seeing in specifically kind of like your market right now in terms of like values, what's happening with like what are the conversations you're having with your clients? Is it because we've just seen 2 increases back to back after kind of status quo, but then before that it was like 8 increases, right? Are sellers holding off to sell because of the fact that their next property is going to cost them more, or like what are you seeing kind of overall in your market?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate because the market that I work in is relatively, you know, it's not like high-end, ultra high-end luxury, like Vital Path luxury real estate.
But it's more of the affluent.
Yeah, it's more, it's like, you know, like
what's the average price?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for a detached home, the average price is about 2.3, 2.4. Okay. So like you're talking like basically it's executives, it's young professional couples, dual incomes, you know, like people got money, right?
Right.
So the thing is, at the end of the day, the fixed rates aren't that bad, right? And that's what people need to understand. It's the variable rate that is screwy right now. And that's where people are just kind of shying away from that. So back to answering your question in a very long way.
Good thing this is a long form conversation. Exactly. It's not a 60-second reel. So it's great.
Oh my God, thank God. But you know, is that they're not, it's not stopping them from doing what they want to do. The problem right now is, like in Vancouver, it's fun because we're talking about the 2 biggest markets in Canada, right? Mm-hmm. So Vancouver, typically most people will sell first and then buy second. So they actually create more inventory for themselves. So we're here. Most people will typically buy first and then sell second because people are like, I'm not worried about selling my home. I need to know where I'm going before I'm going to sell my home, right? Which is what the majority of people do. So that's where we are right now, where we have very little low inventory because people aren't selling because they don't have anywhere to go because there's no inventory.
Now, do you see that changing to your point about the fixed rates? Do you find that majority of people in the area are kind of on fixed rates, so they're not going to be really worried about rate? You're not going to see a lot of inventory in your area come up because people can't afford the mortgage payment. That's not what's happening.
It's not. No, I think personally, this call me crazy, but remember, this is all federal. This is not provincial, right? So you got to take into account your real estate that's in like rural Ontario, rural Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta. When you get outside the major cities where the average price is 1 million, 1, 2, 6, 700,000. Those guys right now that are on variable rate mortgages are feeling a lot of the pinch, right? And the government is not really in the situation where they want to go in and start owning a bunch of real estate and start forcing people out of their homes, because at the end of the day, that's not going to necessarily even create more inventory.
Right.
So
now, but with that though, with what you're just saying, you would think then they would start to possibly look at not increasing the rates as much. Right?
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting because I have a couple clients who are looking at, we talk a lot about generational wealth.
Yeah.
And looking at buying investment properties, whether it's, 20, 30 units versus or 1 or 2 units at a time. And right now, a lot of the cap rates, because of the rates, don't make a whole lot of sense based on the valuations because rates are where they are. However, if you can be savvy and ride out for a little bit, I think that's all going to change going into next year. So I think by the time we roll into this time in 2024, I think it's not going to be back to where it was during COVID, because that was that we'll never see that again.
There's 1.99% mortgage rates out there at that time.
Yeah, that's not happening. No, that ship has sailed, right? So, but is the variable rate is going to come back down again, and what the government I think is doing is giving themselves a very big cushion where they can start to pull back as they need to and bring things to help stimulate everything else that has to get going with the rest of the economy. The other thing is when rates were as low as they were, I think a lot of people were taking advantage of that and buying 5-year fixed rates. So why wouldn't you? When you're at 1.99 on a 5-year fix, that's like money in the bank, right? Basically the bank's paying you.
Exactly.
Now, if you were smart, what you should have been doing is saying, okay, well, I know this payment is absolutely ridiculously low, so what can I really afford? And then doing that to help pay down and buy down the mortgage. But that's a whole other, again.
Well, I also liked, and I also liked the mortgage stress test, like that whole stress test that we put into place when it was coming into effect. Not a lot of real estate people and mortgage people liked it because it brought down the affordability for people. But I think it actually has helped now, because a lot of people, not everybody, were stress test against a much higher interest rate than they actually paid. Yeah. So as the rate has gone up now, it's gone up even a little bit higher than what they were stress test against. They knew that they could afford it, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing is you look at the foreclosure rate in Canada, it's actually extremely low. It's very opposite of what happened in the States. And if you go back to 2008, 2009, when they had the financial crisis in the States, that was because people were taking on mortgages that were worth more than what they bought the house for.
It was like ninja mortgage, no income, no job applications, right?
If
you want to walk and talk and chew gum at the same time,
you got a mortgage, right? And then people were buying a house for $600,000-$700,000 and getting a mortgage for $900,000, and then going out and buying a brand new car and furniture and
we were both in the business, Mark. In Canada, you could have a great job. You could be one of the executives, dual income, great job, great credit. You were still getting put through the ringer on getting financing, right? It wasn't like what was happening in the States back then.
No, and that's why Canada came out relatively scot-free at that point, because everyone realized, they said Canada is the best place for mortgages in the entire world because of the policies that we had in place during that time and still have to this day. So, you can do high ratio here, but again, you can only do high ratio up to a certain amount, and you can't do 100% financing. It doesn't exist in Canada. So again, given everything that's going on in this rate world in which we're in right now, I go like, you're still looking at around 5% on a 5-year fix, right? When I bought my first place in 97, yes, I'm old. I had 6.25% then for a 5-year fix. So like, it's still good. Like we were just spoiled for the 2.5 years during
100%.
COVID where like money, I can't honestly say I think rates will ever be that cheap ever again.
Yeah, I mean,
unless God forbid
you go through something like that, like a COVID.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't ever. Right?
I was talking to somebody on my team yesterday. I was like, they just got into the business, and I was mentioning my first property that I bought in 2006.
Yeah.
I got an interest rate of 4.5% on a 5-year fixed with TD. So you can look it up what the rates were back then. And we thought we robbed the bank.
Yeah.
Like it was a steal at 4.5%. And then when you started to see them drop even a little bit, not even up until COVID, but just like within the next couple of years, I was like, shit, I wish I wish I went on a variable at that time. Right. But anyways, at 4.5%, we were really happy. Yeah. And so I was saying, look, if we can get around 4 to 5 back on a variable, like 4% on a variable would be very nice. To think that they're going to go back to what they were in COVID, that's just not what we're going to see.
It's not going to happen.
Now, in terms of like investments and stuff like that, like what are you kind of speaking to your clients about where there's maybe some compelling buying opportunities?
I think right now there's actually some great deals out there. If you can get stuff into like anything that's a duplex, a 3-plex, 4-plex, stuff like that, as long as you have a decent down payment, there are some opportunities out there for sure, because again, like guys are going off of the fact of the cap rates on their current situation, not on the actual current market situation. And those are two very different numbers.
Right.
And that stuff right now, generally speaking, is not moving all that quickly. So because guys are going like, well, your numbers don't make sense. And then the other issue on it is like, it also gets a little bit tricky trying to get like all the people out of there who are paying like way bottom rents.
Yeah, I mean, you got to implement strategies like cash for keys and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I have a client who's looking at a property down in in Toronto for it's a $5.1 million unit with 22 units in it, but the rents are all way too low, and the guy's just owned it for a long time, so he's basing it on his very cheap rate that he has on the mortgage,
right? And the fact that he bought it for $2 million, whatever, you know what I mean?
But again, there are if you got cash in hand, those are some great buying opportunities, because you can go in there and make some pretty aggressive offers on those things and probably walk away with a pretty happy result.
And I like that, right? Like I think that's always a strategy in a market like now, which is throw a bunch of offers, see what happens. You don't. Like the beautiful thing with real estate is that you can tie it up and then do the due diligence later. Yeah. Right. Make it conditional on your lawyer's cousin's sister's approval, whatever. Figure it out. Make it conditional on due diligence essentially, and then see if the numbers work. Right. Where I think a lot of people make a mistake that are investing is like they try to run the numbers first. Yeah. And then somebody else who's savvy, to use your word from earlier, they pick it up and then go through the process. Yes. Right. And then I think the biggest thing that someone can learn with and understand is try to become more of a decade trader and not a day trader when it comes to real estate.
Well, but I know you talk about that all the time, and real estate is a holding asset, right? I know you're big on condos. I'm not a big component of if you're buying them already that exist. Yep. Right. Because it's very hard to make the numbers work. Right, where you're going to have to put a little bit of cash into it in order to make it kind of work out or break even. Yep. But if you can buy like in the pre-con stuff and get in really early enough, then you got some great opportunities from that standpoint.
For sure.
But again,
and even those sometimes, Mark, in all honesty, like full transparency, like some of those are not good investments, and like actual projects, but also even the strategy of pre-con is not good for everybody. No. Right? It's each to your own, right?
Yeah, and again, it also just depends on your budget and how much you're willing to pay with, right? Yeah. Because that's the big thing. Like, I really want to buy a 5-plex, but I only have $20,000. Well, then maybe you're buying a pre-con as opposed to like the 5-plex, right? It's like lotto. You got to know your limits and play within it, right?
Right. I like that. I like that.
But, I think that like any market there's always opportunities, right? And it's just figuring out what those opportunities are and then being able to take advantage of them. And like you, I really love real estate as an investment tool because, again, not to say you shouldn't have your mutual funds and your RSPs and RESPs. Like thank God we have an RESP because my oldest is going to university in the fall. So
congrats.
we got to start paying for that. But the thing with real estate is that it's a tangible asset, right? That you can get rental income out of, right? You can have someone paying all your expenses for it. You can then leverage with it to use other equity out of it to go and do other things, whether it's, to buy more real estate or whatever that might be. But whereas in a stock or a portfolio, you're stuck. Like you're not doing anything with it until the time goes and when you go and sell it.
100%.
Now, being a landlord is not necessarily for everybody. And there are pros and cons to it, doing 100%. Again, that's another thing the government should have a conversation with some realtors about and how to work that and make that better. But that's a whole another podcast. But it's like anything, just like, it's being, I think, diversified is always the key, right? And I look at it and go, when I bought my first place it's going to get harder and harder for our kids and to get into these markets as the time goes on because we're in one of the best cities in all of Canada and probably in North America, and where real estate is expensive and expensive for a reason because it's a great place to live. And the sooner I'm saying is that you can start buying tools to have available for your children in order to get into the market. There's going to be that better off. And that's, I think, as parents, that's what a great thing to be able to do. And if you're young and getting started, wow, what a great thing to be able to do to buy your first place, don't sell it, right? Get that mortgage paid down as fast as you possibly can, take that equity out, and then go buy your next place.
Yeah, I think with somebody who's 25, 26, I'm at 41 now, and people are like,
baby.
Fucking 41's old.
You're a baby.
Because you're a little bit older.
Try 12 years older.
Okay. But, they're thinking 20 years from now, you're like, nah, man, as a 25-year-old, they're like, nah, that's way too long. But it comes so fast. It comes so fast. You blink, right? And I know I'm not trying to sound like the older person. I walked, 10 miles to work in the snow. I'm not trying
barefoot.
to speak up. Yeah, barefoot, right?
Uphill,
exactly. In boxers. It comes really quickly. And if you can, as a 25-year-old, put some money away into something, it could be a stock. It could, we obviously like real estate for all the stuff Mark just went over.
It's what we know.
Exactly.
Right. So
exactly.
I'm not going to say if you're an investor, you work in the stock market, obviously that's what you know. Yeah. Right. But I think if anything, what's the first thing they tell you when you look at your portfolio from a stock is you got to be diversified.
Sure.
Right. So why shouldn't you be diversified altogether?
100%.
Right? And, one of my biggest regrets is not keeping our house in Vancouver. Because we had a 2-bedroom suite in the basement that took me a year to convince my wife to start renting that out because it was just the two of us. Right. And we were never going down there. And then we started, renting out, and I said, and we took the money and we used it to double up on our mortgage payment every other month. And when we moved to Toronto, my wife was like, I didn't realize we were coming out here with so much. I'm like, yeah.
What did you sell it for back then?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. I know. It's so funny, right, brother? Because our REC Canada's kind of slogan, our tagline is "I'm glad I did."
Yeah.
Because we've heard so many of those stories, including my own. There was a home that I sold, which I just I wish I kept that thing. Now, and that's how I'm glad I did kind of either I'm glad I kept it or I'm glad that I actually invested and took some action.
Now, in all fairness, if I'd come to Toronto and I was going in going into a job where I had a fixed salary and income, we probably would have held it. But because starting all over again from scratch and whatnot, I didn't want to add any more stress onto me than I already had. So it just made sense to unfortunately let the house go.
Yeah, and sometimes taking that step back gets you allowed to take two, which you did when you came here. You were able to go a little bit more on the offense and kind of segueing into something else I want to touch on with you is that you started now producing a lot of content, right? You've been the guy who's been farming, really involved in the community, obviously now in the last coming up to 19 years in Toronto, your business has shifted in terms of you now do have a lot of repeat and referral, right? Which is always a testament to people, right? I know it's a buzzword, repeat and referral, but look, if someone gets repeat and referral business, they would have been, if they were like shit and they didn't know what they were doing, or they were full of shit, is what I was trying to say, they would get sniffed out. You know what I mean? And obviously you've been able to have the longevity, but now you made the shift to content.
Right.
And so what is that like process for you, like in terms of what type of ROI are you seeing? And I'm not asking like, oh, how many deals you did from a video, because for everybody, I'm going to tell you, it doesn't work like that. You don't do a video and then do a sale. It's all encompassing, right?
You just nailed it right there.
Okay, talk about it.
It's all part of the overall package, right? And that's why I think people have to understand that very clearly. It's part of what I do as my overall marketing plan. And there's the other part, it's a plan, right? It's not just throwing shit out to see if it works or not, it's a plan, right? So because I geo-farm, right, I have billboards, 3 billboards surrounding the farm, plus the mailers, plus the social media content, plus, everything else that I do, and then combined with your open house signs and for sale signs and all that other stuff. Everything is consistent. It all looks exactly the same.
And the game is essentially for you is you just don't want, like, you want every time you want people to be able to get to a place with you and say, fuck, bro, I see you everywhere.
Exactly.
You're that fucking guy who sends me the shit on the flash.
Okay.
Is that your billboard there? Yeah. Oh my God, I see you on Instagram. That's the game plan, right?
Totally. Well, okay, so you want to buy a new car, right? You got a car in mind. Let's just call it a Range Rover.
Sure.
Just for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens? You start seeing them everywhere, right? You're like, wow. It's like, and you're like, that's called your reticular activator. It's a part of your brain. So once you get an idea in your head, right, that it constantly reminds you, keeping your eye out for it. So that's the same thing with marketing, right? So it's constantly staying in front of them so they know when the time comes to sell, they have to call Mark, right? Or they have to call Jas, depending on what's going on. So it's they see you on social, like you said. They see your billboard. They see your for sale sign. They see a postcard. They see a newsletter, right? They might not be selling today, but when time comes to sell, they're going to know, I got to call that Mark guy because I see him all the time.
He has to be up to something.
Right? Like there's a reason. And, a meeting I had on a listing I just picked up a couple weeks ago, the wife used to be in marketing, and she said to me, she goes, the reason we're meeting with you is because I love your marketing. She goes, it shows you are who you say you are. You're engaging. You know your stuff. You're community orientated. You're involved in the community. You know the neighborhoods. You live in the neighborhood. That's who we want working for us.
Was it tough at the start in terms of the videos? For you? Not necessarily from a time perspective. I'm trying to get into the mind more than anything else. Was it tough to put yourself out there?
No, I mean, I think...
because like with the billboards and the postcards, it's kind of like you're not talking.
No, you're just smiling. You're just smiling. You're just like,
you have a good smile.
Yeah.
Get it professionally done. You're good, right?
Good. No,
the video's different.
Video is different for sure. And I guess I'm lucky in a sense that I have a fairly confident personality that I can, doing video wasn't really that hard for me. The hardest part probably was learning how to slow down when I was talking because I tend to be a bit of a fast talker. Not like a fast talker in a salesman standpoint.
Yeah.
I get too wound up.
Yeah. Well, you're passionate.
Yeah, energetic. So like it comes across.
And Mark, really quickly, wouldn't you say that's really one of the tickets? Like people probably do, like I know your stuff about days on market, list to sale ratio. I know you know all that stuff. Months of inventory, everything. Yeah. But probably a lot of people buy because of your enthusiasm.
Yeah, look, you should love what you do, right? If you don't love what you do and you're just doing it as a means to an end, I hate to say the chances of being successful are probably pretty slim.
Especially having the longevity, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, it's a hard business. It's not for everybody. For whatever reason, the public thinks it's like it's a money-making machine. But they don't understand all the hard work that goes in behind the scenes to get to the point where you are making like really good income. But if you're not going to be passionate about it, you're not going to have fun with it, and you're not going to be energetic about it, it's probably not the right business for you to be in.
If you don't like people,
But but there are,
you'll be surprised.
there are agents out there that
people out there will be surprised. Like
totally.
there's agents who just don't like people.
But they actually have a successful business.
Yes.
And and there's other people that like are great leaders, and they're probably better off running a big team and doing that kind of thing rather than being face to face with clients. I have a small team. I still love being face to face with clients. I love doing the presentations. I love the I love all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I love making the videos for the listings, right? And talk about like, so when I first started, it was like slow down in your speech, to like don't get so long-winded. And I remember like the first listing video I ever did, I think we went literally room by room and spent like 5 minutes on each room.
So it's like 3 bedrooms. Oh yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, and I remember those flip cams?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we used it with one of those like those flip cams, like and everything's like it evolves, right? Like and if you're not willing to learn and grow, that's where you're gonna get left behind, right? And and everything's that learning process, and it's talking to people like you and doing your courses and things like that, and understanding like you don't have to invest in a ton of equipment. Like that's not the point. Like these things are pretty powerful,
Amazing.
Right? Like
yes,
branding
exactly. Don't leave home without it.
Yeah. So you can do so much with your phone today, and the thing is like now obviously there's a lot of chatter with like, unpolished content versus polished content, what does better. It just depends on what the message is that you're sending and will impact whether it should be polished or unpolished, right? Obviously, if you're doing a house video tour, you want it to be polished.
Especially at $2.8 million. Honestly, a good idea.
Honestly, even at $500,000,
100%. Yeah,
it doesn't matter because it's relative to that person who you're representing.
For sure.
To what
it's a great point,
right?
Great point, brother.
So, like if I'm selling my house or condo, whatever it is, for $500,000, that's my most important prize asset.
That's 2.8 to you.
Yeah, exactly. Or 5 million, it doesn't matter,
exactly.
Right? So always be on that professional level. But if you're like, if you want to shoot something and you're just walking down the street and all of a sudden something comes to mind, that's when you can have fun and go off the raw content and just shoot it. And like,
I like the fact that you do a mixture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's important because you also you're throwing some curveballs at people, right? It's like you see the polished stuff and then you see some unpolished. It's like, fuck, there's all these sides to Mark, right? And I actually think you do a great job as well with the fact that you not only do the real estate videos, like obviously you do your house tours, you do education on how to buy, how to sell, the best way to stage and all that stuff. But then you add the personal touches, right? And it's kind of cool because everybody gets to see a different side of you. You are a husband. You are a father. You are somebody who leads a team. And so people get to see the whole 360 view of you, right?
Right. And that's the thing is like you don't want it to be about real estate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because people don't give a shit, right? They want to see that you have a life, that you do other things besides sell real estate, that you're engaging, you have a personality, and that's how they're going to connect with you, right? Because the thing is, you want to work with somebody who's like you,
100%.
Right? So if you're like a person who is, let's say, like you're a total foodie and like you love going to restaurants and going out for crazy meals, and not necessarily expensive meals, but just like really trying adventurous food.
Like the hole in the wall.
Whatever it might be. Yeah. Like that is great content. That is stuff that you can have fun and film with on the side, right? Because then someone who's watching that says, oh, wow, I'm a foodie too. That's really cool. Yeah. And they sell real estate. I like this person.
And that really happens. To your point of the lady that you were speaking to just listed a property with you.
Yeah.
She probably didn't even know how much you know about the market yet.
Right.
Because like you haven't had a conversation with her. But she knew she liked the style of you. You know what I mean? And she knew that you were involved in the community. What happened in person, in real life, is happening all the time digitally as well.
Absolutely. And it's really important that what you see on video and what you see in real life should be exactly the same. And if they're not, you got a bigger problem on your hands.
100%.
Because that's a really not a good thing.
Well, that's why I think most people who win with content, they generally are the ones, not to say that the others who don't do this, but are the ones who just do it like kind of raw. There's not really a script.
Right.
Teleprompted.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I just want to hit these 3 friggin' points, right? Because when you do that, then when they see you in real life, it's like, oh, it's the same fucking guy.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like he's different if you were very polished, and I don't mean the way that you're dressed or anything of that sort, but if you speak from a script that you're reading, then when you meet them in person, you might not have that script with you if a question comes up, right? And so you're almost better to just speak from the heart and attract the tribe that comes your way.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting to say about the script because I actually don't use a script.
I know. But it works well for you because when they come here, if you did, right? Like if you were somebody who used a lot of scripts in your videos and then they meet, you're like, holy fuck, you're way too much for me to handle like in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What? You were so nice and polished and primed, and that's what I was expecting is what people say. They know when they see you on camera, they're either like, I really like this guy. There's something about him. I want to go meet him.
Yeah.
Or he's weird. I don't want to meet him. They don't waste your time.
No.
And how nice is that? Right?
Exactly.
I can tell from day one you never use a script. There's no way you all, other than if you were a professional actor. If you were able to act raw, then you're a professional actor, right?
For sure. Now, I mean, but to that
you
point,
keep your ums and ahs. I love that shit, man.
You try it because like look, you're not an actor.
Exactly.
Right? You're not a paid actor. However, that being said, when you're doing stuff, it depends on what you're doing too. Like again, I go back to like if you're doing a video tour for the house, try and keep your ums and your ahs down as little as possible. But that's what I was saying is like know what you want to talk about before you start talking about it. It doesn't have to be a script, but just know the things that you want to hit so that when you're going through the house, you make sure you already know it in your head that what you're going to say, right?
Right.
It's not a script, but you have the framework is in your head.
It's so funny you're saying that, Mark, because I don't do the house tours because I just don't do it like my agents do that.
Yeah.
But to your point, you're so right. I do a lot more of the educational kind of content. Like here's, the 2 best ways to create wealth in real estate. But every time I go into those videos and every time I'm teaching somebody to do those type of videos, I'm always saying to them, know how you're going to start this video and know how you're going to end this video.
Totally.
Because that's where everybody kind of gets stumped. It's like, oh shit, the camera's on. So just know how you're going to start it.
Yeah.
And then know how you're going to end it, because the stuff in the middle, you know already. You kind of know how to stage a house. Just tell me how to do it like in the tips and then just sign off on the video.
Yeah.
And that's it, right?
Yeah.
And so to your point, if you're doing the house tours, know your points. The main thing is going to be that you're going to speak about these brand new appliances or whatever it is. The fact that the terrace is beautiful, the deck is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
That's such a good point, because I was just helping somebody shoot a video and they kept on getting stumped at the end.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, just stop. How do you want to sign this off?
Yeah, and then by the way, I have a standard ending for all my
So
videos.
it's easier for
yeah,
you.
So it's like basically it's like we just always do a quick summary. And then it's like if you want any more information, if this is on the web, right? Or email, text, whichever works best for you. Always happy to chat.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Boom. Done. You know your opening, you know your close, and then the stuff in between, you're just kind of knocking off on
because
points.
just because the video to point, I mean, we're getting like in a whole other conversation, but I'll keep it really short. It's just that because of the rules with MLS, you can't have branded content on MLS. So that's why we always make, from the dialogue perspective, we keep it unbranded so we can use it for both videos, and that way we can have our branded video for the public as the link on the actual for sale signs, and then on MLS we have the unbranded version.
Why do they do that? I've never known that.
I don't get it either, because it doesn't make any sense. It's like,
is it because they want to be able to have somebody in the future use the pictures and the video?
No,
Okay.
because they don't want anyone to have an unfair advantage from a competition standpoint over another agent, because so basically, let's say like I create a video and then you come on and go on to that listing and you're thinking about selling, and it's like you were going to hire John Smith from ABC Realty, and all of a sudden you see the Mark Arnstein video with all the branded information and you're like, oh, I want that now.
But I'm getting the better agent.
Yeah, but
sometimes,
which doesn't make any sense.
That's an odd one.
Yeah, it's an odd one to me too. I never because we're in a competitive business.
Yes.
And we all compete against each other.
Yes.
Right. And the person who has the best tools in the toolbox should theoretically get the job.
Right.
Right. So, but that's anyways. But back to video part of it. Just I want to say also is that, and then I think we discussed this before too. Is that most people go, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna look on video and how I'm gonna sound and all. Who gives a shit, right? Because once you meet someone in real life, guess what? That's how you look and that's how you sound. Like it's so right.
Fucking love it. It's so true.
It's so true. It doesn't matter. The point is just do it. It's like Nike, right? Just do it.
And unfortunately, the way that it works, the confidence comes after you do it.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate. I say it a lot, where I wish I could just give somebody the bag of confidence and then they can start doing it. It just doesn't work like that. Like, you got to do it and then you get confident.
But hey,
it works backwards.
But if you're trying to learn working out or knitting or a new sport, or you're not going to be awesome at it out of the get-go, right? Your endurance going out for a run is not going to be all that great when you first start, right? You got to build it up, right? But if you don't start doing it, you're not going to build it up.
It's
right?
putting those reps in, right?
Yeah,
it's putting those reps in.
It's repetition. It's about it. It's like studying for an exam.
I mean, 100%, right? I get asked all the time, like, how do you just sit at the couch and just do the podcast? And I'm like, yeah, I have 219 episodes. Like, this is 220 or 221 or something. I can't remember. 220, he says to me. I think it's actually going to end up being 221, Nikki.
Well, this is going to be 221, 222, 223, 224.
Like, I would be an idiot if I didn't pick up on some patterns along the way, right? Like, you kind of know, okay, I kind of know when Mark's coming to an end of a sentence, I can interject, right? Totally. I know how to say, oh shit, I really want to get this point across, Mark. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I remember what you were like. You pick up on these patterns, but that happens over doing so many reps. You're not going to be able to do a video like Mark or do a video like me. It's actually an insult to yourself as well as him and myself, because you haven't put in the work yet.
Yeah.
You just haven't put in the work. And so just give yourself some time. I mean, I think the patience, the theme of this podcast was patience, because we spoke about farming and the only way to make it work is to think about it from a long-term perspective. Make sure you have a plan and stick to it. But so is content, man.
Yeah. No, but it's everything, right? It's like I said earlier, it's content, it's the farm, it's relationships, it's everything, right? It's like working on your database. It's all consistency, right?
So true, bro.
It's, true. I mean, the theory goes on your database, you should be able to get a 20% return off your database per year from a referral standpoint. So means basically if you have 100 people in your database, 20 of them should be able to refer you some form of business over the course of a year. But you can't just sit back and wait for it to happen. You got to talk to them. You got to reach out to them. You got to communicate with them. You got to send them stuff. You got to be in touch with them. It's about 34 to 45 times over the course of the year per person.
So
right?
is that what you're like? So that's exactly what we do. We're probably at close to 50.
Yeah.
We probably do 50 touches a year.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
Because I don't do any of the farming. I don't do a lot of paid stuff, like i.e. paid ads or anything of that sort. We sometimes, trickle it into our business here and there. But 99% of our lead generation / prospecting is done through the database, which is done through the 50 touches, right? So we do the phone calls, the emails, the events, and all that kind of stuff. I love the fact that, again, we do different things in our business, but there is some similarities. It's been
could it be consistency?
I think that's the main one.
Yeah.
So as I said, the theme might be patience. It might just be consistency as well. The P and the C kind of in the business that's needed. But what I really wanted to tell you, brother, it's been a pleasure watching the growth of your content, because that is something that I was kind of part of at the start. Just seeing why your starting point, not the fact that we were helping you doing it. It's just, I knew when kind of your starting point was with it. Number one. Number two, the success that you've had, brother. Like I have 63 agents, but if there was a listing that needed to be a home that needed to be listed in your area, I'm probably going to call you.
Right.
And that's because I think of you top of mind because of all the branding and because of all the consistency with the farming. I also know that you know your shit. I can't wait to see the next 10 years of your journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, just want to congratulate you.
Man. It's funny you mentioned the next 10 years, because I honestly, not to be shy, I'm going to be 53 next month in August. But I really feel like I'm at the point in my career now where I'm actually just getting warmed up.
Oh, I fucking love that.
I feel like, it's, I don't feel like I'm my age. I don't,
but 53 is not really that old.
No. But
you look great. I can tell that you have a lot of energy and everything, brother. But and you put in the work, so you deserve it. But 53 is really not that old either, right? You're only halfway.
Yeah. No, for sure. But thank you. And I appreciate that. I just feel like just what I've learned and how the business has evolved and the things now that you can do to produce and create content and information and and get out there and be able to generate that much more business is like, it's exciting. It's fun, right? And the one thing I gotta say, to people also who are watching this, like, yes, you want to create all this stuff, but remember, at the end of the day, your number one job is to get deals done, 100%. Right? So this is just one of the tools you're going to use to get the deals done. And make sure, if you're in the position where you can hire and use and take advantage of people, then you should definitely be doing that. You shouldn't be spending your whole entire time, worrying about doing all the edits and all the cutting and all that. Because like, if you're not good at that, you're going to have to learn how to do all that. And that's another thing you're just going to have to learn how to do. Do what you're amazing at and get that as your priority list. And if you can outsource the other stuff, 100% outsource it. So if you're, if it's a 25, 35 hour task, that's something you shouldn't be doing, right? Your time should be somewhere, depending on the stage where you are in your career, it should be somewhere between a $200 to a $1,000 hour task.
100%.
And if it's not, then give it to somebody else.
And that's, and if you think about the fact that, oh shit, I'm not that person yet, like at $500 on average in that example, an hour, the way that you're going to get there is by getting rid of the $25 to $30 an hour job, so you can start to open up your time to do what we obviously know is the number one skill that you need to pick up on, which is bring in business. Yeah. Somebody else will clean up the mess.
Yeah.
Like somebody else can lick the stamps. Somebody else can, and it's very important that the stamps need to get licked.
Yeah.
It's very important that you print the MLS listing. The pre-listing package needs to get delivered. All that is very important. You just don't need to do it. You need to figure out a way to bring in people, because that's what keeps the lights on. Marky,
absolutely.
We could have went for 4 hours. I just know that. We will definitely do a part 2, because I think at some point I want to get the update from you, just on what's going on in your business, but B, then I also want to go into detail, which is like how you started to scale out as well, because I think that's important for people to get. But in the meantime, I want to again say congratulations, but I also want to say thank you for joining me on the couch,
buddy. It's a pleasure to be here, honestly. You and I have connected so much over the last like 3-4 years, and it's like a brother from another mother kind of a thing. And it's like, we know once we get going, it's like, oh my God, the wheels just come off, and it's like, woo.
That's why we said no questions. We don't need no points. Let's just sit on the couch and turn on the friggin' mics, boys. We'll figure out. We do this anyways on phone calls.
Exactly.
This is exactly what we talk about.
Totally. But honestly, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love these chats. They're always so much fun. I get so much out of them. Love you too. And
thank you.
And I think it's important that people understand, just as we end this, is that this is an opportunity for both of us to grow, because he's getting stuff from me and I'm getting stuff from him, which is the coolest part. Even though where we are in our careers, it's irrelevant, because you could always be learning.
100%. I think that's the definition of mastery, right? Like when you actually get to mastery, you realize how much you don't know and how much you can still learn. Yeah. But we're doing it again. We're out. Love you guys. Take care.
Bye.